Hey, guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to talk a little bit about the current controversy that's swirling around regarding this uh, NCAA women's uh, college basketball game between Iowa State and LSU and Jill Biden's faux pas, Jill Biden's invitation of, hey Lisa, Joe Biden's invitation. What's going on? Of both teams to uh, a ceremony at the White House. Yeah, the First Lady, Joe Biden, Dr. Jill. A couple of weeks ago, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, whatever, or last week, not really sure, but there was this game played between these two teams. And during the course of the game, uh, both of them did this hand gesture, this can't see me hand gesture. And for Angel Reese, the girl on the LSU team, people were saying that she was unprofessional. People were saying that um, she was she displayed unsportsmanlike conduct. And then the other girl, Caitlin Clark, she does the exact same thing, and everybody says, "Well, look, she's just being aggressive. She's just being, she's getting into the game. She's really invested into the game." So, and then Jill Biden, as usual, as per the tradition, Jill Biden then says, "Well, we usually just have the winners here, but we'll invite both teams to the White House." And it's like, hello, uh, to Dr. Jill. You hardly ever say anything and you hardly ever weigh in on any topic. And this is the hill you choose to die on. This is the topic that you choose to finally weigh in on. Something that is a complete racial and societal double standard. You know what I mean? When in our society in which we live, in the United States, when a racial minority, particularly an African American, does something, it is always derided, it is always mocked, it is always either considered low class, ghetto, uneducated, uncouth, and out of the norms of the quote no quote norms of society. But if a Caucasian person, or even sometimes a non-black POC, will do something of that same thing, do that same action or display that same behavior or embody that particular characteristic, that individual is praised. That individual is looked at as, in this case, she was aggressive. She was getting into the game. She was, displaying her excitement, her sportsmanlike prowess, but the other girl displaying unsportsmanlike conduct. The white person is praised, the black person is derided for the same action. And this hand gesture is exactly what I'm talking about. This hand gesture, many wrestling fans will know, is the can't see me hand gesture. Right. And the girl from Iowa did Lisa's correct. The girl from Iowa, Caitlin Clark, did the gesture first, and then the black girl responded. But this hand gesture, that John Cena went on to use throughout his WWE career, that he still uses, he used it at WrestleMania 39 as a prelude to this move, the five knuckle shuffle. The name in itself makes us giggle and laugh. This hand gesture was stolen, culturally appropriated, from Tony Yayo of G Unit, who used it first. He used it in his "So Seductive" video back in 2004, and this was during the time, as many people remember, that John Cena was developing his basic Thugonomics gimmick. He even stole the spinner belt that in the late 2000s that everybody hated. That comes from that comes from G Unit. That uh, who can remember when 50 Cent in the early 2000s signed his first $1 million deal with Shady Aftermath, and he appeared on TRL with a spinner chain, and then Cena took that 50 having that spinner chain and then put it into the spinner belt. But 10 years before that, when before Cena existed, everything um, that is rap esque, the rap attitude, the rap ethos was completely called by mainstream media, the white society, ghetto, low class, uneducated, gangster. We all remember in the 90s, pre Eminem, before Eminem became popular in rap, how the mainstream society used to make fun of rap and used to not make fun of it, but like talk about it as being a danger to society, a menace to society, especially with the advent of NWA and then later Dr. Dre's The Chronic. We all remember that. So even with the hand gesture itself, Tony Yayo invented it, came out of the hood. The phrase "can't see me" came out of the hood. The spinner chain came out of the hood. But John Cena steals it, culturally appropriates it, and then it becomes acceptable to mainstream society. And not only acceptable, praised, uh, put on a pedestal. Same thing happens with, like I was telling Lisa, with big butts. Um, when Sir Mix-a-Lot came out with Baby Got Back in the early 90s, during those days, uh, the white media used to say that you had to be like a skinny stick. We remember how the Calvin Klein models used to look. We remember how we used to always joke, oh, these models are anorexic. And then, uh, and black women had voluptuous bodies, big butts, and everything, curvy type figures, and they were called fat and out of shape and ugly for those same things. Then first J Lo comes out. J Lo, of course, like I said, it could these things can be appropriated by a non black POC as well. J Lo comes out in the late '90s with a curvaceous figure. Um, she comes out with the Selena movie in 1997, and all of a sudden, due to her popularizing it in mainstream society, what black women were called fat and out of shape for and made fun of and derided for. Look at the case of Sarah Bartman, this woman who was kidnapped from a South African village, made to be a spectacle um, in England and the United States because of the size of her butt. She was made fun of. She was derided. Generations of black women were derided for something that was a physical characteristic. But then J Lo comes out. She finally has a similar build. I mean, she's Puerto Rican, so she probably down the line somewhere in her ancestry has some black ancestry, but still, she's visibly non-black. You know what I mean. So, um, she's acceptable and passable in mainstream society after the Selena movie. Then it takes a step further, right? A step further. Not only now, J Lo has made it popular; she's put it into the cultural zeitgeist. But a couple of years later, Kim Kardashian hits the scene. She has the sex tape with Ray J, and she becomes popular. And all of a sudden, after that, not only are big butts acceptable, like they were starting to become in the late 90s, now they are fashionable. Now they are desirable. White girls are going to Miami, getting BBLs, and making this shit so ridiculous that even black women's natural curvaceousness doesn't seem enough. So they've essentially turned it back around. Now you had to have a super big ass to to even be acceptable. So they found a way to manipulate it to now they have the advantage thanks to plastic surgery and found a way to just like they did with rock and roll culturally appropriate the natural characteristics of an individual of black women. And we see this with countless other things. Saw it with rap. If when Eminem was saying the kind of homophobic things that Eminem was saying, yeah, there was a little bit of blowback. Yeah, there was a little bit of controversy. But Eminem, when he was saying the homophobic things, was seen as edgy. He was seen as telling it like it is. He was seen as telling the truth. Meanwhile, uh, when Shabba Ranks, who is a Jamaican, was a Jamaican dancehall artist, comes out with a song advocating for Bati Boy murder, no different than um, what Eminem was advocating for in his album. He is blacklisted to the point where he doesn't even get his flowers as being one of the first um, Jamaican artists to introduce dancehall to mainstream American audiences. So you see the double standards. You guys see the double standard that exists here. When an African American does something, oh man, that's low class. We can't have that. Same thing with dreads. Dreads in the workplace, especially in the 1980s and 90s and 2000s, were seen either as a radical cultural statement. It meant that you were a quote unquote black militant or quote unquote black radical, or it was seen as unkempt and messy. Now you have people wanting to get dreads. People are trying to culturally appropriate dreads, trying to say that, uh, dig up these historical photos of Vikings in the ninth century that had dreads, and saying, well, see, dreads are a part of Viking Scandinavian culture. So, at least it's saying people aren't used to women being competitive. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't think of that. You're right, Lisa. Yeah. Um, that Viking Scandinavian culture. Meanwhile, dread's been out forever. Same thing with the hairstyle baby hairs. Baby hairs forever been out, but all of a sudden, the mainstream society, the dominant society, starts using baby hair, and all of a sudden, oh, they discovered something new and they act like they invented it. Same thing with, and sometimes they'll take these cultural artifacts and these cultural things, and they'll not even know what it means. People have people have used by Felicia so incorrectly that I was just like, stop using it. Saying that by Felicia is a person, oh man, I saw this one meme saying, damn, Felicia must be special. She's always going somewhere. Taking it completely out of context, not even understanding the origin of the movie that it comes from and what it means and why Angela Means character, Felicia, was so rudely dismissed by Craig and Friday. Because they're white, they've probably never seen Friday. It's not part of their culture. Uh, um, you know what I mean? So they that's what happens when cultural appropriation goes wrong. Another example, Karen. Karen. Remember when everybody in 2020 was going around calling people Karen? Well, the thing with Karen originated on Black Twitter on the Black interwebs as a reference to the white lady who was a snitch and who called on the guy who was a bird watcher. All of a sudden, from that, the radical right wing steals that, turns it around, and all of a sudden it becomes an attack on women in general and a means to complain about women's bitchiness. That wasn't the original intention. That wasn't what it was meant for. You know what I mean? Nah, actually, it is, Lisa. It originated. I first remember hearing it in regards to the bird watcher lady. You know what I mean? Then all of a sudden, I started hearing it on radical right wing websites as a way to attack women, calling every woman a Karen, even ones that weren't even snitches and had nothing to do with the original intent of what that name uh, meant. You know what I mean? Because by the time it got to people on the original, on the far right, it meant something completely different. Same thing with simp. All of a sudden, I started hearing the word simp not in MGTOW and the manosphere spaces, but on African slash Black conscious websites, and all of a sudden, everybody, this one's a simp, that one's a simp. Same thing with manosphere commentary. Manosphere commentary. Kevin Samuels was the originator of manosphere commentary, and all of a sudden, they said, okay, we don't want to talk. We want a whiter face or a more acceptable to mainstream society face for this manosphere commentary. So Kevin Samuel passes away, and rather than have some of the other people that make manosphere do manosphere commentary becoming the new face of the manosphere, they take and they put a white face on manosphere commentary with, well, Andrew Tate's not really white, but he's more white identified as a mixed race man than uh, Kevin Samuels. And then they switch him out and they put just pearly things. And just pearly things is purely white. Not only purely white, but racist at that. You know what I mean? So they steal everything. You know what I mean? The good, the bad, wokeness. Wokeness started with a song from Erica Badu back in 2012. Now all of a sudden, even the people that hate wokeness are saying this is woke, that is woke, and they don't even remember what the original origin of the word woke really mean. They never understood it. They never cared to understand it. So that's just like with this. Um, uh, and Lisa is adding that people aren't used to seeing women being competitive. Um, yeah, that could be an issue, Lisa. You have anything else you want to add, Lisa, to this? And some of the basketball team, some of the basketball team has said, you know what, we don't want to go to the White House. We rather go to Barack and Michelle's house. You know what I mean? What Barack and Michelle doing? They don't um they don't even acknowledge um they don't even acknowledge Jill Biden. Jill Biden, you're canceled now. I mean, right. You're not canceled. This is the first time you ever did anything wrong. I'm just joking. But yeah, they'd rather go to my thoughts on it. Hell, it's a game. You get caught up in it. So what? The black girl did it, and like you said, the white girl did it first. But it just reveals the racial double standard that exists in our society. We saw it in 2022 in regards to politics. The January the Sixers, people People want us to forget about the January the 6th. But they'll bring up the LA riots every chance they get. They'll bring up the George Floyd riots every chance they get. And had the January the 6th, as we said before, had they been African American, every single one of them would have been killed. If Eric Adams or Barack Obama or take for even the mayor of DC in the 90s that was caught smoking crack. Didn't he do time? But the mayor of Toronto that was caught doing the exact same thing did no time or little to no time at all. So we know these racial double standards do exist. And when it comes to cultural appropriation, it exists all across the board. No. Lisa says, do I think LSU should still go to the White House? No. Because, yes, this is something minor, but the idea of racial double standards is what poisons our society. The idea that racial double standards should be tolerated. Even more dangerous racial double standards like school shootings or other things, crimes. This goes deeper than just something dumb that two girls did at a basketball game. This speaks to the racial double standards of our society when it comes to a whole bunch of stuff. Violence, selective outrage. When a black person does something, it's a big hoopla. When a white person does it, right, exactly. Lisa saying inviting the losing team is not a big issue. It's not a tradition rather, and she's right. Why? See, I thought people were against handing out participation trophies. I thought I thought handing out participation trophies and constellation prizes was what made millennials soft. What happened to that? But since the white team lost, now you want a constellation prize. Okay, I know that, Reese. I know. Uh, no no constellation prizes. But the white girls team lost, and they still want to invite them. That's the constellation prize. That's softness. That's bitch assness. What happened to that? No participation trophies. You lost. You don't get to come. If you won, you get to come. If you don't, then you don't come. Remember, no participation trophies. Life is a competition. Life is a game. Isn't that what we're always hearing from the right? Isn't that what we're always hearing from the conservative base? Oh, stop crying. You're special snowflakes. You're, you're soft as baby powder. But once again, just like other examples, who's the soft? Who's the snowflake? You. Because just like the 2020 election, you're still crying about it. You're still belly aching about it. We have moved on. And just like this basketball game, you want the girl whose team lost to be invited. Excuse me, what does that say to people that are in competition? Does that say competition doesn't matter? That it's futile. If we're gonna invite both, then it's futile. They might as well have not competed then, right? Come on, get with it. But see, when it's them, again. When it's them, they're for it. But when it's our side, they're against it. All of a sudden, this is a completely separate issue, but all of a sudden, Ben Shapiro is advocating gun restrictions after the Nashville shooting. Advocating gun restrictions. Second Amendment, Ben Shapiro. What happened to Guns don't kill people. People kill people. But I guess somebody who's from a group he doesn't like, a trans person, does an action, and all of a sudden we need to shut everything down. See the hypocrisy. See the complete hypocrisy from the right. It's like I said that Andrew Cuomo video in the archives. When Andrew Cuomo was caught doing his sexual misconduct, he was thrown out. When Donald Trump was caught doing it, he's innocent. He was just that's just locker room talk. That's just banter. Uh, he didn't do anything. Look at the protesters yesterday in New York. You think you would have saw something like that from the left when it came to Andrew Cuomo 2 years ago? No. Uh, the Democrats didn't do it, and he was the governor of our state. We didn't do anything like that. We didn't protest the innocence of Andrew Cuomo because we knew his ass was guilty of sexual misconduct. But when it came to Trump, they protest for him. They go out for him. They have cognitive dissonance. They pretend like he didn't do anything. See, and then those are just two white guys. But I mean, uh, my point is what they represent. The left wing and the right wing, everything is politicized, and everything on the left, even if it doesn't necessarily benefit uh, black people, they're seen as the Democrats and the left wing, left are seen as representatives of the entire black agenda. You know what I'm saying? And it's just crazy. You know what I mean? I listen to a lot of the both sides, so I see a lot of this kind of cultural appropriation and hypocrisy type arguments. You know, where you'll get somebody, you'll get somebody that is a right winger and or a white person or but same thing, same difference really. Because even if it's a black right winger like Brandon Tatum and Candace Owens, they're still parroting white supremacist talking points anyway. You know, you know what I mean? So, and they'll say something, and they'll say the exact same thing that a left winger said 2 years ago against them, but they'll say the exact opposite, but they'll be for it instead of against it. Perfect example when Barack Obama many years ago um, semi bowed down or honored at least the king of Saudi Arabia. People said, "Oh, how dare he sit down and bow down to a monarch? Doesn't he know he's the president of the United States? We don't acknowledge monarchy. Our whole history was built on being monarchical. You know what I mean? And we know that. We talked about that in other videos in regards to what the ethos of Fourth of July is supposed to mean, especially in the minds of conservatives who think they're still living back in 1776. And I remember the whole blow up about that. But when when Meghan Markle, remember the Oprah interview, said something about the British royal family, oh, all of a sudden, you know, how dare you dishonor the monarchy, the monarchical head of state of another country? How dare you uh, not abide by their traditions and bow down to them and kiss their ass? How, Ben Shapiro, don't you know that the cultural heritage of English Anglo-Saxon society is deeply embedded in the English uh, in the office of the English monarchy. When same thing when Queen Elizabeth died. How dare you disrespect uh, uh, a foreign dignitary of another state that's royalty? But Obama wasn't conceding allegiance to the King of Saudi Arabia. He was just paying respects to him. He was just honoring him. Same thing you want Meghan Markle to do. Same thing you want Americans on Twitter to respect the queen. So what? We're supposed to respect one queen and disrespect another king of another country, or is it just a bullshit double standard? I think it's just a bullshit double standard. And again, January the Sixers, they can be angry at the system. They can blambast the system. But BLM protesters that are protesting the unlawful death by police officers of innocent black men, they need to be locked up. They need to be destroyed. They need to be killed. But January the Sixers, we're supposed to understand their anger and their rage against the system that was built for them, the system that themselves and their ancestors built to oppress other people. That we're supposed to understand. That we're supposed to sympathize with. Uh, This is why people sit here and say, despite what people like Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles and Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens say, that there is no racism against white people. Because how can, yeah, how can you, how can you say that there's racism in your system that you yourself created? You created these double standards. You created uh, the oppressive system that causes the conditions of of black people and other POC. But yet you want to act like you're oppressed by it. But yet you created it. So if you're oppressed by the system you created, then that's your own fault. BLM is fighting against a system that was created to oppress them and keep them down. Not that they are a part of. They were the disenfranchised. Not the same thing. You know, you can't compare the disenfranchised to the um, cr- cranky crybabies. You know, they're just mad because they no longer have the power they had back in the day to oppress somebody legally and socially. You consider racism because you're not allowed no longer legally, politically, and socially to be racist against another person. So you consider that racist. You know, you talk about you're pro-life, right? But you're not pro-life when it comes to uh, provide providing sustenance, providing adequate food, adequate housing, adequate employment for the child, the fetus that's going to inevitably be born. You're not pro-life when you advocate for the death penalty against prisoners that are sometimes innocent um, in our system. And I've heard conservatives now saying, well, Trump is innocent till proven guilty, but when it uh, when it comes to a black person that's arrested, they're guilty until proven innocent, right? They're already guilty even before they even did anything. OJ, this was the case with OJ. This was the case with Michael Jackson. This was the case with Trayvon Martin. Case with countless other black men. Okay, that's enough of that. To Lisa's point, um, Lisa says that she's happy that basketball is mentioned here because women's basketball is hardly ever mentioned. Yeah, Lisa, I know you're a women's basketball fan, and last time it was mentioned was the Brittany Griner thing, and that's another example. Brittany Griner, I think, is now the most famous woman to ever play Uh, yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah, no, they're not. Nope. You wouldn't be able to work. Yeah. You wouldn't be able to work. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it. What I got to say. Thank you, Lisa, for contributing. Thank you guys for watching.